Justice League Red is leveraging both moral and philosophical complexity, while Batman and Robin Year One is going straight for the heartstrings. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. That's your first and only warning. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on October 15th, 2025, and originally published on September 17th, 2025. Just 3 comics that I'm going to be talking about this time. First up is Nightwing number 130, which I'm surprised to be interested in because this is the first in a new story arc called Cirque de Sin, I think, which is going to be dealing with this criminal organization that was kind of hinted at in the issues leading up to this. But at the same time, it's bringing over something from the previous story arc, and that is the existence of Nightwing Prime. Now, if you're not familiar with this character, it's based on I think Silver Age was when this was going on, before the actual creation of Dick Grayson's Nightwing. There was, I believe, a Silver Age version of, well, a character named Nightwing. No conceptual relation at all. It was actually part of the Superman mythos, where, if memory serves, while Superman and Jimmy Olsen were shrunk down in the bottled city of Kandor, they were operating as vigilantes or superheroes in that world, and they were called Nightwing and Flamebird, I'm almost certain. And so, but that concept understandably faded into the background, with Dick Grayson becoming Nightwing eventually in the comic books. But this looks like an attempt to kind of revive that, or at least reflect back on it. I don't know how permanent it's going to be. But in the story arc leading up to this, a young boy is given the powers, basically, of Superman by a fifth-dimensional imp. Now, I could do without the fifth-dimensional imp stuff. I tend to not like stories involving Mxyzptlk and Bizarro and some of those kind of silly, brighter types of comic book concepts. But for this character to still be remaining is interesting, because he is a boy, basically, in an adult body, but he's unable to switch back and forth like, say, Shazam. And so there's a big problem with this super-powered character that is a young boy, doesn't know how to use these powers, suddenly has all the powers of Superman, basically. And so just imagine how dangerous that could be. There's a comment made by Superman in this issue talking about how it felt like when he was getting his powers, like suddenly the world was made of styrofoam. And the boy in this story is also kind of struggling with this sudden power that he thought would be great and the fulfillment of this boyhood fantasy, but actually is making life very, very difficult for him. So Nightwing, realizing there's a big problem, goes to him, presents basically an antidote that will permanently change him back into just a boy. And at the last moment, he changes his mind because Nightwing Prime tells him that, like, he doesn't want to be a bother, and he is having trouble with these powers. He just wanted to do good and stuff like that. And I think that desire on his part to do good wins Nightwing over in the last minute. And he was like, okay. You're going to need a lot of training. And so he decides that he's going to try and train this boy to kind of like deal with the fact that he has these powers to become a capable hero. It seems like a moment that we're not supposed to entirely buy into, that we're supposed to kind of have some reservations about this. And so because of the way it's portrayed, I don't think this Nightwing Prime character is going to stick around long term. I think there's going to be a noble effort to train him, but it's just going to go south eventually. But we'll see. Anyway, I'm surprised, given this character's origins with kind of the silly fifth-dimensional imp stuff, how interested I am in this character being around. I'm actually not very interested in the Cirque de Sin stuff, because what's been teased so far has not really been of interest to me, but we'll see. I'm at least interested in the first issue and what's gone on in this new arc for Nightwing, and that's Nightwing number 130. Next up, we've got Batman and Robin Year One number 11. This series has been interesting to me, but it's not been like every issue has been fantastic to me. What I tend to connect with are the relational moments between Batman and Dick Grayson, who is Robin at the time of the story, basically the first year of him being Robin. And in this issue, well, actually starting with last issue in number 10, some government kind of involvement resulted in Dick Grayson being taken out of Bruce Wayne's care. And so Batman is now back out on the streets doing his war against crime solo. But he does check in on Dick Grayson, who's been placed with a new foster family. And as he's just peering through the window, Dick Grayson is happy with this new foster family. And so Bruce is wrestling with this, with Alfred in the earpiece, just kind of saying, yeah, maybe it was wrong of me to do this. And Alfred's trying to convince him, no, this is really what was best for the boy. But what Batman is seeing through the window seems to indicate otherwise. And so he leaves the house. He's like, you know what? No, it's settled. Batman's going to be a solo act again. But what he misses seeing is Dick going into his bedroom after smiling and stuff with these foster parents he's been placed with and just being distraught. So clearly he was putting up a very convincing act, and he really wants to be out there with Batman. And they don't allude to it really in this issue, but what I seem to remember being the case with a couple of Robins in the past is that there's a realization on Bruce's part that, like, these boys have been shattered in various ways. And Dick Grayson certainly, I mean, he saw in a different way, saw his parents get murdered and is totally shattered by that. And Bruce, of course, knows what that's like and wants to try and give him a better road to healing and dealing with that than he had, being basically all by himself with, Alfred to some degree. And so I feel like even though in this issue they don't really make a case for it, like there is a justification that it is best for Dick Grayson to be with Robin. And we see that in more ways than one by the end of the issue, where Batman, overtired, fatigued, warned by Alfred that he should not be out and fighting crime when he is at the end of what he has. Well, against that counsel, he continues, gets himself into trouble, and basically is plummeting to his doom until at the last minute he is saved by Dick, as in his Robin garb, which I guess he took along with him or got his hands on again somehow. But right at the last page, when he catches Batman and Batman just collapses, Robin is over him and just like angry, and he says, "Alone? Are you insane?" And so I just kind of love this moment. I'm not even sure why. Maybe there's something pulling at my heartstrings as a dad, because in this moment, we see that Bruce needs Dick. And now in this moment, he needs him in this very practical sense. Dick saved Bruce from plummeting to his death. But I think there's a parallel just in the experience of a parent that, like, we love our kids so much and we are bettered by them in many ways just from being a parent and all the difficulty and stretching and growth that has to come with that. But then also just like how life-giving it is to have children and to have that loving relationship with them. And so there is a sense in which, I feel like, oh my gosh, I need my boys in my life. I really need them. And so this kind of like paralleling that maybe in some ways is tugging at my heartstrings. But in a couple different moments in this issue, they are just kind of showing this relational connection, this desire for these two characters to be together, really as, even though he's not been adopted at this point, really as father and son. And I just really appreciate when comics lean into these kinds of family relationships. I mean, fast forward years later in Nightwing 130, which I just talked about, Nightwing actually calls Bruce dad at one point while they're, kind of out in their garb and having a private moment. And that's a relatively new thing as of an issue of Nightwing, a number of issues back, can't remember how long ago it was, that Dick has started calling Bruce dad. And at first I was like, oh, this feels different and new, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I really do like the fact that he's settled into this idea of Bruce being his father. And so then in Batman and Robin Year One, we get to see really the beginnings of that, as Bruce is wanting to be a good father to Dick. So Yeah, for moments like these, I am still really appreciating the time I'm spending reading Batman and Robin Year One. And of course, that was number 11. Finally, in Justice League Red number 2, we are dealing with some complexities of Power Girl and Green Lantern, what's his name? Simon Baz, that's right. And Cyborg, all kind of like taking direction, Black Ops missions directions from Red Tornado. And in issue 1, I mean, he's asking them to do some sketchy stuff, and they're wondering if they can trust him. And all the more at the beginning of this issue, when Cyborg, sent out by Red Tornado, steals something that he didn't realize he was stealing. He thought he was kind of told that he was taking it back from these bad guys that were holding that had this outpost or this lab where a bunch of stolen goods were there. Turns out, no, he went and at Red Tornado's direction stole this like quantum processing whatever thing from the company who has every right to it. Likewise, Power Girl and Simon Baz realize that they have been deceived by Red Tornado, and so they are all upset and demanding answers, understandably. Now, what they've been told up to this point is basically that Red Tornado has all these predictive models that can determine these horrible things that are going to happen unless they do these certain sketchy things right now. But in this issue, they point out predictive models like that, they are just totally unreliable. And so it's kind of like a not completely satisfying explanation. This issue still doesn't give us the full explanation, even though it seems like it's going to. Red Tornado's like, okay, it's finally time to tell you everything. Well, he doesn't really tell them everything. There's still some major questions at the end. But still, I love the moral complexity here. I love how they're playing with AI a little bit. There's an exchange between two security guards at the beginning where they're talking about AI and like, oh yeah, my kid pointed out to me that this video is actually fake and stuff like that, which is certainly something that we are thinking about. So it's nice to see that facet of reality kind of being recognized, brought into comics. And I can't help but think that's not an accident when we're dealing with Red Tornado, an AI character, which they also point out is not totally artificial, that he does have some kind of a non-physical component, which is part of DC lore. At some point, I think he was determined to be like an air elemental or a fire elemental. I can't remember what the deal is, but he has some kind of arguably a soul. And so he's not pure, just naturalistic AI in the sense that we usually think of it, which muddies the waters in some interesting ways. So I just love, like, philosophically kind of what they're messing around with in Justice League Red, morally, what they are asking of these characters. It's neat stuff. Those kinds of moments bring out character traits, and I always appreciate stories that do that. But, you know, that said, they might still be tugging on heartstrings in the next issue, because at the very end of this one, part of Red Tornado's explanation to Kara, to Power Girl, involves turning on a monitor in which there is a live feed of her parents saying, "Kara, is that you?" And she's like, "This is impossible." What? Because, of course, her parents were Kryptonians. They died along with all the other Kryptonians. And so what could this mean? Is this a parallel reality type thing? Is there a scenario in which her parents could survive? I kind of doubt that, but I'm just very interested in where they go. It's taking it to a very personal level for Power Girl. And so, yeah, looking forward to what comes next in Justice League Red as of reading issue number 2. All right, well, this week, just because I think of the potential of Power Girl and her story going forward in Justice League Red, but especially for what's going on in Batman and Robin Year 1, 11, I chose the sapphire ring representing love because I can't help but feel the love a little bit with what I read this week. And I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, love getting your thoughts, your reactions about stuff I cover here, or maybe comics I didn't talk about this week. Any of that you can leave in the comments below, and I love interacting with you. You can get this content as a monthly podcast assembled together if you would like. And there's also the regular Christian Geek Central podcast. Tons of stuff made for you over at christiangeekcentral.com. Go check it out as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.